Hello friends, today we are going to do a tutorial on hip circles. So delicious, voluptuous, lovely for the lower back. I'll begin with a very basic Egyptian hip circle. So Egyptian is a very grounded form of belly dance. So feet are reasonably wide, hip width apart, soft knees, tail tuck. And the thing about Egyptian hip circle is it's driven really by the knees. So the hips in hip circles just are along for the ride. They're not actually there pushing the movement. The movement is done by your legs and the hips glide gracefully on top. And with an Egyptian hip circle, there's absolutely no tilting on the pelvis. So if I turn sideways, you're just pushing your hip with your sort of knees, the lower half. It's your pivot at the ankle, and you're trying to keep nice and steady. So if you take a little sit down, imagine you're just sitting on the bonnet of a car and just giving it a little bit of a polish with your bum. Okay, and change direction. I fear a cat's about to go in shot. No, good. And so the joy of a Egyptian sort hip circle is because it's so grounded. It's really nice and meaty for travelling. So if you just get your hip circle going. So remember, the tailbone constantly points downwards. So if you had a pendulum attached to your hip scarf dangling down, you would be able to swing it smoothly in a circle, because this is calmness, because it's all happening from down below, from down where those knees are gently pushing little circles. The torso is serene, okay, and Egyptian hands I like because they pull the shoulders down, and when you're doing big hip circles, it's nice to feel a little bit stable elsewhere. So it's really good for the core, lovely for the lower back, and reverse direction just for the fun of it. So as I said, because we're very low to the floor, we're nice and grounded. The other thing that's quite fun with it, I'll add some music now, is you can make it bouncy. So bounce, bounce, bounce. Still keeping the torso nice and steady. Things are just happening from below. Remember, we don't bend over, so you're always upright and just bouncing. So it's not so much getting the bum behind as everything, the circle all happens in front. So you come through to seated, and then you just push your hips forward and seated. So in theory, you could do it up against a flat surface, and then you know if your bum kept hitting the wall, you were sticking it out too much. So the tailbone's always pointing downwards. Change direction. So it's a lovely little core workout, and you don't have to do it with the bouncy hips, but it's just nice when you've got a beat to add a little bit of bounce. And the other thing, as I said, it's because you can have time to shift the weight from one leg into the other, you can start taking steps. So as the weight shifts over to one side, you can raise a foot and then raise a foot. So you're getting used to take it slowly, shifting the weight so that to travel feels quite natural. So this is going forward and back. Always take little steps when you're travelling. Really dig your heels in. This is a very grounded move. So you're really digging into those heels. You can go sideways. Okay, and change direction. So that's a very grounded Egyptian one, really good for the spine. So if you have any, I'm going back to bouncing, if you have any back problems, then we'll do a little bit of walking forward. Actually, let's go around on the spot, circling in a circle. It also gives chance to double check posture, making sure the upper body is still as those hips glide seamlessly around. Nice. So shake that out. Another way of doing hip circles is much more straight legs. So much more perhaps a Turkish style. So your legs are a bit straighter. This is handy if for some reason you're dancing in high heels. So your legs are straighter. This is going to make your core work much harder. So you're going to press your hips. So this time the knees aren't pushing at all. You are going to be pressing your hip bone forward, and as ever with belly dance, you never dump into the lower back. No. Always tail tucked. And again, you're just pushing your hips forward, and then use your core muscles to crunch those hips back in line. Push it forward, crunch it in. So use your belly muscles to really crunch those hips back. So you press the hips forward and then you crunch it back in. Push forward, crunch it back in. Forward, crunch it back in. Okay. You can have the legs pinned together. If you keep the thighs pinned together, you'll really notice the muscles that you have to use and change direction. Okay, lovely. So this one for travelling, obviously the legs are quite close together, so you travel with teeny steps. And just keeping upright. Remember, you're not dumping into that lower back in any kind of way. It's always tail tucked. And you're just pushing those hips, knees can sort of get involved, but if the thighs are pinned together and it's pressing those hips, arms wide from the body really helps give a little bit more freedom of movement. And going to the side. As ever, when you travel to one side, one hip tends to do the biggest movement and the trailing hip feels smaller, so you tend to exaggerate with that foot you step into. So you're keeping it nice and close. And again, round on the spot. As ever, keep those tailbones tucked under all times. Lovely. And those are the basic hip circles.